Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. My name's Colleen Taylor. I'm about to head into a party being hosted by Kleiner Perkins Caulfield & Byers, the major venture capital firm. But the interesting thing tonight is that I'm not standing on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, which is where Kleiner Perkins is known to have its base, but instead I'm in San Francisco. I'm in downtown San Francisco. That's because Kleiner Perkins has opened up a major office here in the city. So we're going to head inside and find out what's going on. So follow me. We're here at the Kleiner Perkins San Francisco headquarters, and standing with me is one of the hosts of the party, partner at Kleiner Perkins, Chi-Hua. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, yeah. So tell me about what this office is. Why did you guys decide to move up the 40 or so miles and plant a flag here in San Francisco?
Yeah, so 5 years ago when I joined the firm, we basically had no portfolio companies in San Francisco, and it was actually quite rare for any of us as partners to spend time up in San Francisco. I remember many times entrepreneurs from San Francisco would email and I'd say, well, I'll probably be up there once a month, let's get together. That has been a complete shift over the last 5 years. We now have over 30 portfolio companies here in San Francisco. Personally, 7 of the last 8 investments that I've made in the Bay Area are based here in San Francisco. The other one is in our incubator down in Menlo Park. And as a result, we thought it was really, really important to have a presence here in San Francisco, specifically in SoMa. From this location, there's probably a dozen of our companies that are within walking distance, including One Kings Lane and Path and others. So amongst our portfolio companies, Twitter is up here, Zynga's up here, One Kings Lane is right down the street, Path, Zarly, Clout is right next door. So there's quite a few companies that are here in San Francisco. And what we found is with consumer tech, San Francisco is really the place to be.
And so I'm looking around this space, and it's really cool, but I imagine it feels very different from, you know, your space down in Menlo Park.
Yeah, it's very different from Menlo Park. Very different.
What will this really be used for? I understand that it's a startup kind of space. It's not really as much for the financial part and the investment part.
Right. In fact, we don't have full-time offices here for any of the partners. So we have a couple offices that we also use as conference rooms, and then over in the back corner of the building we have incubation space. And right now there's 4 companies back there in various different stages of development. One started with 2 employees, just 2 co-founders who we funded with a seed investment. They've now grown to 7 employees, and there's a few others as well sitting back there. And what it is it's just a great convening space that our startups can use. They come here sometimes to do board meetings, interviews, offsites, and as well as incubation space for very early stage companies.
Now, larger, do you see a shift of power? Is Silicon Valley becoming less important and San Francisco becoming more important, or is this just, you know, an overall strengthening of the whole market? I mean, how do you see, is there a balance here?
I think it's probably cyclical. During every cycle, there's locations that have more and fewer companies started. And in the first bubble, there were quite a few companies that were started in San Francisco as well. And then in the early 2000s, a lot of the innovation shifted back down to Silicon Valley. The thing that's unique, I think, about San Francisco is because most of the companies that are now creating value are at the application layer of the stack, not at the infrastructure layer of the stack. That means design-oriented companies by and large, and that's an emphasis that we've seen broadly, is that design plays a huge role in these companies, and great designers and young software engineers, they want to live in San Francisco. As a result, the companies get started here.
Now, speaking of great design, we're going to shift a little bit because you're on the board at Path, beautifully designed app, Clout, some of these other, you know, pretty hot startups that have raised, you know, some nice amounts of money. We keep hearing about the IPO market and some people getting a little bashful now because, you know, Facebook and these larger companies that have gone public haven't necessarily gotten the best reception. I mean, how do you see these startups and their investors? How are you viewing the public market?
Well, I actually have a contrarian view relative to what's been talked about a lot. I think all of those companies went public way too late. They went public after most of the growth was out of those companies. The right time for a company to go public is when you are at sufficient scale, kind of over $100 million in revenue, but you're still growing very, very quickly so that public market investors can enjoy the fruits of that growth. What happened with a lot of those companies was they grew through very large private financing rounds, and by the time they went public, they were growing pretty slowly. They were growing slower than Google and Apple in some cases, right? And the public market doesn't like that. So, you know, I think that even though there is the backlash of this appears to be people saying, well, we shouldn't go public. Actually, you should go public once your business model is solid and you have a solid management team, a predictable set of financials. You should be in a position to take your company public, and the public market and the private investors and employees will benefit from that.
Cool. So if it's up to you, this isn't the end of IPOs. We'll just maybe see some earlier.
I hope so.
And I also want to ask, you're probably evaluating new startups all the time. Is there one thing that you really want to see come across your desk that you think is a huge opportunity that you haven't quite seen yet?
Two areas that I think are ripe for transformation that we haven't yet seen full product teams and companies formed. One is in the digital health arena. So healthcare is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that has remained largely untouched from the consumer perspective by technology. The second is education. Education, it's completely nonsensical that our education system works the way that it does, and I think we're going to be living in an era of $49 to $99 tablets on the desks of every single kid starting from the time that they're in preschool, and that is a gigantic multi-trillion-dollar industry that is still run the way that it was in the early 1900s, right? And I think both of those have the potential to really be innovated on over the next 5 to 10 years.
And last question here. Last month, Kleiner Perkins just turned 40. So you guys are kind of hitting, getting into the middle age segment. What's happening, at the firm? Are there ways that you guys are, really working to keep things fresh?
Absolutely. We hired 2 new partners to join the tech team, Ray Bradford and Megan Quinn, who I believe you're going to speak to later today, and they've been fantastic additions. In addition, we've refocused on consumer and enterprise tech. Probably 70–80% of our partners are now working in those 2 areas, and really continuing our legacy of investing in the most important companies in every wave of technology, whether it's internet or mobile or whatever wave is going to be occurring next.
Cool. Well, Chi-Hua, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So standing with me, we're still at the Kleiner Perkins party. This is Megan Quinn, who just joined Kleiner Perkins a couple months ago, and now she's an investment partner. Thank you for joining us here at the party. So just to get started, I know we wrote a blog post. It was a big deal when you joined Kleiner Perkins because you've had a great career, Square, Google, these places. What made you decide to get into, venture capital, and how's it been so far?
Yeah, being an investor actually gives me the opportunity to scale all of the things I love to do, which is working with entrepreneurs, building products, and building teams. And so now, instead of doing it just with one company and one product, I really get to work with a lot of great individuals in the Valley. And it's been awesome. It's been really great.
Right. And we're here at the San Francisco office.
Yes, launch day of the San Francisco office, though it's been in beta for about a year.
Right, yeah, because people have been coming in here, but this is the housewarming party. How often do you kind of spend here in the city versus in Silicon Valley?
So, the second I was done with college, I moved up to San Francisco, SoMa specifically, and it sounds like a lot of other young folks are doing that these days too. So we definitely want to have a presence here in the city. It's where the companies are being built these days. And I spend probably the majority of my week in the city. Here, coffee shops, wine bars, and everywhere in between.
Right. And I want to ask, because your background, you have a really strong background in design, product management. Are there any trends right now that you think are a little bit played out in terms of design, or any kind of design things that you'd like to see startups employ a little bit more often?
There's the debate around skeuomorphic design, which I'm observing from the sidelines and not jumping into, but I think it's really interesting to watch that play out between Apple and many of the startups that have followed in those footsteps. I do think there is a trend towards getting the technology out of the way for the consumer. So how can you design experiences and then leverage technology to make those experiences come to life, as opposed to pushing technology first and foremost?
And last question here, you're out there scouting for deals all the time. Is there one way that startups or potential, investment companies can get your attention?
It's hard to miss, on Twitter, email, LinkedIn, Instagram, Path, Facebook. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to talk with anyone.
Great. Megan, thank you so much.